Hi, my name is Eduardo Ox, and this video is about two things. First, it's about a way to configure Eev, my Emacs package on Microsoft Windows, and second, it's about magic in the sense that I'm going to explain soon. There's a lot of information about Eev in this link here, and a lot of information about this video in this link. Let me start by explaining what I mean by configuring Eev. Installing Emacs and Eev is very easy, even on Windows, but for more advanced usage, Eev needs to play videos, to display PDFs, and to download files. And so, to make all these things work, we need to download some things, configure some paths, and put some commands in the init file of Emacs, that is this one here, tiled/.emacs. Let me explain what is my target audience in this video. It is mainly for beginners, I mean for people who use Windows but they are not even programmers. They know how to use a few programs, but they don't even know how to use a terminal. They know how to open a terminal, but they don't know how to use it fluently or in a productive way. And my second target audience is people who have been using Emacs for years and who are interested in alternatives to the standard way of configuring things in Emacs, which is MetaX Customize. Let me now explain what is Eev. 1 second. This expression here opens the slides of my presentation in the Emacs-Conf 2019. Let me show you some things there. The title of my presentation was How to Record Executable Notes with Eev and How to Play Them Back. And I started the presentation by explaining that I started using GNU Linux and Emacs in 1995. And I started using Emacs in a certain way, and I was sure that everybody was using Emacs in that way, and that way became Eev. So in a sense, Eev appeared by accident. My current favorite slogan for explaining what is Eev lets you record executable notes and lets you play them back. But for many people, this doesn't make much sense. Let me just enlarge this emoji. 1 second. Here. These people, they can understand what they mean when I show a demo. For example, here is a demo of again, just because it's nice, of me sending programs to an interpreter, to Maxima, which is a program. Sorry. In this demo, I sent some commands to a program called Maxima, that is a program for doing symbolic computations, graphics, and other things. And Maxima calls GNU-plot to draw some graphics, and so here are my notes. I mean, the comments that I sent to Maxima, and I just had to type F8 to make Emacs send these commands to Maxima. So many people can understand how I do these things, but very few people use Eev fluently to record executable notes of what they do. My older slogan was even more puzzling. I used to say that Eev is a tool for automating almost everything. And also very few people using Eev for automating their tasks, which is very sad. So let me explain the connection with org mode. 1 second. Org mode can also be used to record executable notes and to automate almost everything. The problem is that org mode is intuitive to many people, and to many people, let me stress this. and Eev is intuitive to very few people. And org mode is simple in one certain way. It's a way that is related to what people called user friendliness nowadays, and Eev is simple in another totally different way related to Lisp. People sometimes say that Lisp is very simple, and Eev is simple in a way that is similar to how Lisp is simple. And by the way, I find org very hard. For me, Eev is simple in a practical sense. And well, I'm going to explain my problems with org later with examples. So I decided to use a trick to make Eev more popular, and the trick is that people can use Eev to learn both Emacs and org mode. So in this video, Eev is going to be something secondary that people can use to learn both Emacs and org mode. And I'm going to show how we can use a certain series of videos about org mode and how to index those videos to learn org mode. That's it. I'm recording this video in several parts. So this is the end of the first part. I'm going to record the other parts and then glue everything together. Let me now explain the basic installation in more details. I'm not going to show how to install Emacs, but once you have Emacs installed, you just have to follow these steps here. And these steps are explained in many places. For example, this is the link to the material about Eev in my homepage. If you access my homepage without this #Eev, you get this thing here. And if you access it with the #Eev, you go to this section. And note that here it says this video is about installation, navigation, etc. Let me open this page in another tab. And here we have a list of tutorials. And let me open the first tutorial in another tab. Well, in Emacs, we can access this tutorial by running this. So this is the tutorial as seen inside Emacs, and this is the tutorial in the browser. Here we have some links, some instructions, and this thing here are links to that video, the installation and navigation, Eev nav, and these links here points to positions in the video. But if I access them by clicking on these links, it takes ages to open this video because it has the browser to open YouTube, then it shows an ad that I have to skip, then sometimes another ad, and then it plays the video. But if we have everything configured, we can execute these things here, this Lisp hyperlinks here, and they play the video in the browser in 1 second or two. So that's it. And we can also access the videos, the list of videos, by typing metax find first class videos. We get this listing here, and the video about installation and navigation is this one. And one very nice thing is that when we access this video here, we have a lot of information about the video, and here we have a link to a kind of index to the video. So if I execute this, I go to an index that is made of a series of sexps like this, and I can execute one of these sexps by just typing meta E on it. But of course, this is only going to work if we have the video player configured. Let me close everything. And configuring the video player is part of the non-basic installation or the configuration of Eev. In principle, what we have to do is to install MPV, a certain video player. Then we have to configure the paths to the browser that by default is Google Chrome and to MPV, and then we have to download all these things here that people who use Windows have never heard about. And then we have to configure a few other things, some easier to understand and some very mysterious. Anyway, let me show why we need Wget. That is a program that downloads things from the internet. Note that if I just execute this, I play a video with MPV, but I'm going to run a hack here that hides all the videos that I have downloaded. And now if I try to play this video, Eev is going to say that it's going to show me all these things here. If I don't understand them, I can run these, follow these things here to go to the tutorials to understand what this other stuff means. So this part here downloads some local copies of files from the internet. This is explained in this tutorial. Note that this link goes to the section 1 of the tutorial that is called local copies of files from the internet. And this is also explained in another tutorial in a way that's more specific to videos. And we also have this section here that explains that some videos have subtitles here, and explains the functions of Eev that downloads videos with subtitles. This video in particular, which is the video for my presentation at the MXConf 2021, it has subtitles. If I execute these things with, let me switch to a smaller font. If I execute these things with F8, then the F8s create a shell buffer here, a shell running inside Emacs, inside an Emacs window. And if I type F8 in these lines here, they are sent to the shell executes these things here, and this wget here downloads a copy of this file from the internet and puts it in this directory. And this other file downloads the subtitles for the video. So the MP4 is the video itself, the VTT is the subtitles of the video, and these things here just register in a certain log file what we have downloaded. And now that we have a local copy of the video, this exp here opens this directory and goes to the line in which this file here is. This exp here that starts with find video plays the video. It works as a test. It plays it from the beginning, and notes that it plays the video with the subtitles. And this other exp is equivalent to the other one. And these other two exps are high level ways that are higher level ways of playing the same video. This thing here plays the first class video whose code is this. So same thing as before, and this thing is the same thing as this one, but in an even shorter form. And for people who haven't configured the video player MPV, they can still access the video by using this URL here. Let me do something even more hackish. If I change this timestamp here to 2 minutes and 34 seconds and I execute this exp again, it regenerates this buffer and it changes these timestamps here to 2 minutes and 34 seconds. That's it, and note that this URL here has also changed, and if I open this URL in the browser, it plays this video in the browser, but it takes a long time. In this case, it didn't play an ad before, but anyway, it takes ages. But anyway, it works. So if you don't have the MPV video player configured, you can still play the videos, you can still start them from the right position, but it's painful. So note that I haven't explained how to do these things. The thing is that these 3 steps here, they can be replaced by something much more user-friendlier. User-friendlier, yes. They can be replaced by these 2 steps here. This one just returns the name of a package that has been loaded, and this one here opens a temporary buffer that shows this. And this is what we're going to use to configure EEV on Windows without magic. Remember that I'm going to explain without magic, the term without magic soon. But anyway, wconfig is an abbreviation for configuration on Microsoft Windows or Windows config. And I'm going to refer to this temporary buffer here. Note that its name is here as the main wconfig buffer. And it says, this instruction says that to configure EEV on Windows, we have to follow the instructions in which of these 5 wconfigs here. I'm going to refer to these ones as the sub wconfigs. The first one is this one that is used to configure the browser, I mean the path to the browser. By default, the path to the browser is in EEV is the one that is used in GNU Linux, which is this one. I'm supposing that the default browser is Google Chrome just because many people have it installed, but this is easy to change. And the thing is that to set the right path to Google Chrome, we have to run something like this. This setq here explains, this setq sets a variable. And note that here we have a line that says C blah blah blah. And this sexp here opens one of the tutorials of EEV. That is a tutorial on Emacs Lisp. Note that this header says, this intro is a very quick introduction to Emacs Lisp. Its intent is not to teach people how to write a Lisp code, only to teach them how to read a Lisp code. So it's very basic. There's a video about it, but I'm not going to discuss that video now. And in the first sections of this tutorial, you learn what are S expressions, what are numbers, what are functions, how to call functions, some basic kinds of Lisp objects. These things also have links to the Emacs Lisp manual, so if you execute something like this, you have the standard documentation of what are the data types of Lisp. And in the section 5, we learn how to use variables. We learn that we can set the variable a to 2 by running this. This expression returns the new value of the variable 2. Now, if we execute this, the value of a is 2, and if we execute this, the value of a becomes 3. So the result of this is 30, and if we run this again, we set the value of a to 2 again, and this exp here returns 10 times a, which is in this case is 20. And of course we can change this line, we can change the version, and so on. So we have to do something like this to set the variable E Google Chrome program. This section says that this is the current value of the variable E Google Chrome program. And we have to change it to the right path on Windows. That is going to be something like this: C:/ blah 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 blah. Note that we need to replace all the backslashes by forward slashes. If we configure the path correctly, I mean, if we execute this exp here to set Chrome to the new value, and we execute this, then Google Chrome is going to open this URL here. Let me try. It says that I have configured it incorrectly. I don't have Google Chrome in that address because I'm on GNU Linux, so for me the right path is this one. If the path is configured correctly, now I'm using this value. If I execute this, then Google Chrome, Emacs calls Google Chrome, and Google Chrome opens this page here. And after setting the variable to the right path, let's suppose that it is this one, we have to update this page in the sense that it is explained in this section of a tutorial. This page here is generated by a template, and if I most of my pages that are generated by templates follow a convention that says that the first line regenerates the buffer. Note that if I execute this, then this string here is going to be changed to the current value of this variable. Note that I can also check the value of this variable by executing this expression here with meta e. And if I regenerate the buffer, then this thing here is replaced by the current value of this variable. And now that the page has been the variable is set correctly and that the page has been updated, now I need to save my configuration. And this is explained here. So at this point, people have to read the Emacs manual, the section of the Emacs manual that explains what is the init file of Emacs. And then they have to check some things here. One of the most basic keys of Eev is meta j. If I type meta j without any numeric prefixes, it shows this page here that has a user-friendly header and a user-unfriendly rest. And it has some links to the main tutorial and some links to this other tutorial that is a fake tutorial that is just an index of the main keys. And here we have a list of the current targets. I use many targets in my default setting, and this target here says that when we type meta j with the prefix 55, it opens the init file here. So let's test. So this was a very long explanation of Y meta5 meta5 meta_j opens the init file. This section here also opens the init file. Here's my init file. It is huge. Let me open a blank page here to avoid confusion. And now the instructions say that we have to copy the updated version of the block below. The updated version in the sense that we have to update this page, and when we update this page, some places like these are updated to the current value of this variable here. So this template produced this thing here that we have to save in our init file. So we use copy and paste. In general, beginners will have things like this at the top. This is called the menu bar, and this is called the toolbar, and then they can use these things here to remember the keys for copy and paste. Anyway, let me disable them. So I'll have to copy this to my init file. Done, copied. Now let's go back. We have just finished the first sub-wconfig, and we can either run this or delete this buffer to return to the main wconfig. And this is the link of the list of the things that we have to configure. Now we can go to the second one that configures wget. Let me just show something before running this subconfig here. It's that in the line 4 of this main wconfig, we have this link here that goes to the source code of Eev-wconfig, and it has this introduction here. And so the introduction starts with this explanation that some parts of Eev call external programs, and then it has lots of hyperlinks that show the sections of the tutorials that explain how these how these external programs are used. So for example, if I execute this, I go to a place in which Firefox is mentioned. If I execute this, I go to a place in which Chrome is mentioned. Here it says remember that I run something that would split the window in two and would run another program in the second window. And here's an example in which we run Python in the second window. In my previous example, I was just running a shell, but we can also run other targets. And these two lines here discuss why we need wget. I've shown that very quickly before when I showed how to download the video and its subtitles, but the full explanation is here. There's a wget here. Here is a demo of how it works. Blah 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 blah. And here we have a link about video that explains the video links. Again, a link to how subtitles work and so on. Blah 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 blah. Sorry, I was missing something very important. This should be obvious now. I said that on Windows installation is very easy. We just need to install these programs and Eev knows how to find them. But on Windows things are much harder. First, Eevee needs to know the fault paths of the executables of these programs. We just saw how to configure the fault paths of Google Chrome. And also, Wget and PDF to text are hard to install. I'm going to show how to install them very soon. And also, on Windows, it's better to use a browser to open PDFs instead of using a dedicated PDF viewer. And also, and this is very important, I don't have access to a machine with Windows, and I have very little access to people who use Windows and who can be convinced to test this. So I'm testing this on a machine with GNU Linux with some hacks to try to make it behave like a Windows machine. And this is one of the most important parts. I said that I was going to explain the term magic. Eev-wconfig is an attempt to solve the problem of how to install these things on Windows, both without magic and with very little magic. In this sense, remember this slogan: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And here in this video I am going to use the term magic as a shorthand for sufficiently advanced technology, that is something that is complex and non-obvious, and that is indistinguishable from magic in the sense of being almost impossible to understand. And I'm also going to use the term black box as a near synonym for magic. And sometimes the term black box is more convenient, even though it is longer, it has more letters, because when I use the term black box, it invites us to use the expressions like opening the black box. I'm going to use that expression a lot. And I mentioned org in the introduction, and I said that I find org very difficult, but I'm a very atypical person. And I recorded a video explaining this. People can access this video either in this page or in this thing here. The index of the video is here, so I can just, for example, execute this text and play the video from this position, 3 minutes and 35 seconds. Oops, the video is not here. I don't have a local copy now, so I need to run this thing here to download a local copy. It was downloaded. It doesn't have subtitles, it seems. And if I execute this, now MPV plays the video from this position. Anyway, let me go back. So in this video I explained why I have always found org so hard to learn. And the thing is that many things in org are implemented in ways that I don't understand. And practically every time that I try to learn more features of org, I get stuck because I start to ask questions like, hey, how is this implemented? And I get stuck trying to answer these questions that are not typical user questions, and I get stuck on that instead of simply learning how to use the features of org as a user. So I find org confusing because my brain is wired in a weird way. And in the language of black boxes, what happens is that when I try to learn org, I try to learn a new feature, I see lots of black boxes, I try to open these black boxes and I fail miserably. And I get frustrated and exhausted. I do not learn the feature and I postpone learning the feature to another day, and the other day I try it again, I see other black boxes, I try to understand them again, and blah blah blah, rinse and repeat. And I also have exactly the same relationship with Emacs Customize. It is the standard way in Emacs to configure certain things and to customize certain things. Let me show how Customize works. We can either type Emacs Customize or run this exp here that simulates what happens when we type Emacs Customize. Customize creates a temporary buffer like this one. So it has this mysterious field here. It has parts that are not editable. For example, if I type a letter here, if I type a letter here, it says you can't edit this part of the custom buffer. It has buttons. It has different fonts, different colors. It has links and so on. And if I follow these links in the right way, I can get places like this one, which is a sub menu with sub options. I can get to a place like this one that offers many things that can be configured, each one with an explanation. I can execute things like this one that opens this page in which I can customize a variable, and things like this in which I can customize a face to change its color, to change its font, and so on. And for me, all these things, all these buttons, this rectangle here in which I can put text, all these things are magic, and they are black boxes that I find very hard to open. And over the years, I have experimented with several alternatives to customize that, between quotes, use less magic. I've documented some of my attempts in this page here, and this thing that I'm presenting now, Eev-wconfig.el, is the next step. It uses all the ideas in this page and a few other new ideas. And Eev-wconfig can be used both with no magic, which is easier to explain, and we're going to see that first, and with some magic, with very little magic. And both ways create temporary buffers that have parts that perform configuration steps and parts that open the black boxes. How? Because they contain Lisp hyperlinks that go to the documentation, that perform tests, that shows the values of variables, and so on. The documentation about usage is incomplete at the moment, so let me return. We just saw that these things have lots of links and comments that, like this one, that goes, this one goes to tutorial, and some other links go to manuals of Emacs. It has some tests and comments. Remember that we run this, and it tried to open Google Chrome to visit this URL in Google Chrome, and it failed because the path for Google Chrome is configured incorrectly. This is an example of a link that goes to one of the manuals of Emacs. This thing here opens the init file, and so on. We just finished the first sub wconfig, and now we need to run the second wconfig. And this wconfig can only be run after configuring the browser, otherwise it's going to behave in weird ways. And the first step here is to download wget.exe. And note that it says run each of the uncommented sexps below with meta-e. The idea is that this buffer here is colored as Lisp. Everything that Emacs thinks that are Lisp comments is in brown, and everything that is not comments is in other colors. So this is an uncommented part, and this is a commented part. Note that here we have some sexps that are longer than one line. For example, this one takes 2 lines, this one also takes 2 lines. And we need to run each one of them. And so this one just returns the name of a package that has been loaded. This one just returns the name of a function that has been defined. And some of these ones return some trivial value that just says that everything went right. For example, this one returns nil, this one returns nil again, and this one is a bit more problematic because it runs something that may take a long time, like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, I don't know. Let me try. Note the messages here. Now we have to wait patiently. There are. It has downloaded wget.exe and saved it in this file here. And now that wget.exe has been downloaded, we can use it to download some other files. But remember that I'm not on Windows, so I have to use some mysterious tricks to make these things behave somewhat like Windows. Let me execute this string, so please don't pay attention to what I'm doing now. This is like you are not expected to understand this. Anyway, oops, sorry. Oops. Oh my god, I forgot the details, sorry. That's it. Yeah, sorry, now I remember. I had to replace the real wget.exe that takes about 5 megabytes by a fake wget.exe that calls the wget that runs on GNU Linux. So sorry for the delay. Let me go back to the configuration of wget. Now that I have wget working, I can execute this block here with F8. Note the instructions here. This thing points to the main tutorial of Eev in the part that it explains how to run shell-like programs like the shell, programs like Python, etc. with F8s. So we need to run these things with F8. The first commands are very quick. And now I call wget to download many small files. And this block here contains some tests, some very basic tests that just call these programs to check that they are executable and to check that they can perform very basic functions like just displaying the help. This test here works. it shows the help of wget here. This one does not work because this file is a file for Windows. I have to run my hacks to make it executable on GNU Linux. So again, please don't pay attention to what I'm going to do. Now this test work. So if you are on Windows and if everything worked, this thing here should show the help of PDF to text, and these other lines here should show the version of these programs here. So if I execute this, I get a message that is just one line long. Same here, same here. And now I need to run this other block here that downloads a PDF file that is going to use in some tests, and a very short MP4 file, a very short video that is going to be used in other tests. So wget again. And now this section 3 here has tests for one of the functions of Eev that call wget. We need to run this exp here to configure the path that is used by this function here. And now we need to run the tests in the second sexp below. So this is a sexp that is here just for the sake of completeness, because it points to the beginning of a section. And this section, this sexp here, points to a series of tests in that section. And we need to run these tests to check that they really work. Each of these find wgets here call wget to download the file from the internet, and it shows the contents of this file in a temporary buffer. Let's try here. Note that the name of this buffer is wget blah 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 blah, wget colon space the URL with asterisks in the beginning and the end. This is similar, but it also searches for the first occurrence of this string in that file. That's it. This one is similar, but it searches for the first occurrence of these in that file. It works. This test here tries to download a file that does not exist. So it says that wget can't download blah blah blah. And these two tests are similar to the other ones above, but they tell Emacs that this thing here is Lisp code and should be colorized, or the technical term is fontified as Lisp. So Emacs colors these things as comments, these things as code, and so on. So that's it. All these tests work. Note that all these tests are hidden in this sexp here. And now this link here explains the idea of anchors that I explained very briefly in the tests above. So this section of the main tutorial explains what are anchors. Note that we probably don't have a local copy of this video here. So Eev offers to download the local copy, but if we haven't configured the MPV media player, we can use this URL here to play the video starting from the right position. Now in section 4 we configure the PDF viewer that Eev is going to use to make Eev use the browser as our preferred PDF viewer. And the configuration is just this line here. the tests are these. Let me go straight to the one that is most interesting. It's going to open this local file here, and it's going to go to page 3 in that local file. Oops, sorry. I need to reconfigure one thing again. Let me cheat. So please don't pay attention to what I'm doing now. Please ignore me. Oh, sorry. That's it. It opened the local file, and it opened it at page 3. Note that there are 2 other pages here, and it's opening it at page 3. So it's working. People who want the technical details can run this link, these 3 links here to get more details. Some of them are readable and some of them are very technical, but anyway, the explanations are there, and I'm supposing that people can read the more readable parts and can ignore the parts that are too technical. And we also need to configure, to tell Eevee to use this program here to view PDFs as text. And this Sexpra here will open the PDF, convert it to text, and go to page 3. That's it. This is page 2, and this is page 1, and this is a form feed that separates the pages. And I'm going to skip this test. And now that we have configured all these things, we have to save these configurations in our init file. And note that these configurations were scattered here. They were interspersed with tests. We have this set Q, this def alias, and this other def set Q here. And in this section here, we have these 3 lines in the same place, and also a first line that is a link to this sub wconfig here, the wconfig that configures wget. The instructions here say that this is similar to something that we did before, to save some configurations to the init file. And let me go to my init file. I've been using it for a long time, okay? So I remember that the keys to go to the init file are meta5, meta5, meta-j. And now paste. So this is the result of running these configurations here. And note that this first line, the line with the C, go to this sub wconfig. So we can run all these configurations and then forget what we did, and then we can open our init file again, and if we want to understand what we did, we just need to run this exp, and we go back to the temporary buffers that were used to configure all these things. Now I've explained most of the basic ideas of the configuration. I can go a bit faster now. And now we have to configure some things for the shell. The thing is that on Windows, it's better to use a shell, that is a shell that is written in Lisp, than to use the default shell from Windows. And we need to run these things again, and we need to run these things here, and note that this line here, it says that this block here only needs to be run once, and the technical details are here. I'm not going to discuss them now. And here is a test. The important part is that these configs here define wget. Note that it's not wget.exe, it's simply wget. It defines wget as an alias that points to the wget.exe that I have downloaded. And we also need to run these very technical things here. And the explanation is that remember that I've shown how to run shells in Emacs. For example, this shell here, and I've shown how we can use the pitch to control other targets. And the example that I gave was to use it to run Python in this window here. And the thing is that I don't know how to install Python on Windows. At this moment, I don't have anyone who can test it for me. I don't know if it works. So I did my basic tests with Lua that I can install by just downloading 2 files. And we did that when we were downloading many files with wget. Oh no, sorry, I'm talking about something that is only going to appear in another sub-wconfig. Sorry. Anyway, here the test just checks that both a shell and the normal shell run the same thing here. They both run a shell. We need to run this thing here too. The explanation is here. I'm not going to open the tutorial with the explanation. Now there are some tests that we can do, but I'm not going to run this test now. And then we have to save these things here in our init file. Again, there's a line that says that this is similar to these instructions here. So the detailed instructions are in our first sub-wconfig. And we need to copy this thing and then go to our init file here and add these things to our init file. Done. So let me go back. Let me go back to the main wconfig. Note that we have completed this one, and this one. And this thing here just checks that we can run Lua from Emacs. It's what I was saying before about running Python or running Lua. So this is a basic test that calls Lua with its full path. Remember that I had to run some hacks here to make things behave as if we were on Windows. So I'm not sure if all these things are going to run on Windows or not. And then we have to run this exp here and then run the test that is below. Let me run this and this and this and this. And then the test is here. Now I have Lua running inside an Emacs window, and it was not invoked from a shell, it was invoked directly. Everything works, and now we need to save these things in our init file. So again, copy, go to the init file, paste. Let me go back to the main wconfig. And now we need to configure MPV, the MPV media player. This is similar to how we configure the browser. We have to configure the path to MPV. I mean, people have to install MPV and then configure the path to MPV. I'm not going to repeat it. I also have some tests. And after configuring this thing here, we go to our init file and we save this thing to our init file. And that's it. If we've done that, we will have 5 blocks here, each one corresponding to one of the sub-wconfigs, and each one contains some configurations or customizations, and also lots of links to help. I mean, we can treat these links here as links that open the black boxes and explain what these things are. And all the commands are very explicit here. If we want to understand what require does, the main tutorial of Eev, this one, explains in section 4, if I remember correctly. That's it. Suppose that we want information about an Emacs function. This video here explains that in details and explains also the rationale behind all these things. The standard way to get help about the function is to type Ctrl-H, F, and Emacs takes the name of the function from the position under the cursor, the point. We can just press enter here and get help. But this help was a bit, for me this help contains too much magic. For example, this thing here is a hyperlink, and for me it's a black box that I do not know how to open. I know how to type enter here to go to the source code, but I don't know what exactly Emacs runs when it does that. I do not know what is the Lisp code corresponding to typing enter here. And I also don't know why these things are in italics and other things are not. So many years ago I started to experiment with a way without magic of doing something similar. And my way is by typing meta h, meta f, and then enter. And this thing here contains hyperlinks that are not black boxes and that are pure text. I can copy these things to my notes, and this one here goes to that description, this one here goes to the source code of require, this one here goes to the manual, and so on. So this is the configuration without magic. I promised that I was also going to show the configuration with just a bit of magic. If I type find wconfig links here, if you run this, it says that if we want to configure Eev on Windows with some magic, we can follow the instructions here. And here we have something very similar, but with fewer tests and less documentation. And we just need to configure these things here, to follow the instructions here that I'm not going to follow. And the thing is that after running all these things, we can save our configuration as just this thing here. So we can save this configuration in Emacs instead of this big thing above. Let me compare the version without magic to the version with very little magic. This is the result of running the configuration with with no magic, and this is the result of running the configuration with very little magic. And note that this configuration here, it ends with this exp here, that is a bit magic. If we want to understand what this magic thing does, this exp runs these 3 blocks here. So this is the expansion of what this exp does. Okay, so instead, if we look at our init file again, this exp here, Eev-wconfig run magic, corresponds to all this stuff here. And now that we have everything configured, we can run an exercise. We can learn org. Let me make a pause on this video, and I'm going to record the part 3 of the video in a few minutes. Hi, I'm back. In this part of the video, I'm going to give the to explain how to do the exercise, which is how to use Eev to learn org. Remember that here in the main wconfig buffer, the last part says exercise learn org, and it has this expression here. If we execute this expression, we get all the instructions. I mean, what we're going to see now is the current version of these instructions. This is a work in progress. I'm probably going to rewrite some things. Anyway, here we have some URLs. This is the page about Eev-wconfig, and its last section is this one, exercise learn org, and it has some links here that I'm not going to open. The important thing is that this link goes to a README that explains what is the zip file with the videos. So here is the README of the playlist. And we can download the video from this link here. At this moment, this link points to Google Drive, and the file is quite big, it's 1.7 gigabytes. And if we click here, Google Drive says that it can't open the file, but we can download it. So, well, you have to download the file, we have to unzip it somewhere, and then you have to follow these instructions here. The important thing of this exercise is that you need to learn how to create shorter hyperlinks. They are explained in this section of the main tutorial. Remember that find Eev quick enter is the main tutorial, and I think that these video links are quite good because they explain how this function creates several other functions. Anyway, so this link points to that section. Yeah, we have to download the zip, you have to unpack it somewhere, and then you have to create a link to that directory, which means that you have to edit that directory here to the right directory. And this is probably going to be very useful. Emacs has a mode called DIRAD, which is for DIRAD, I don't remember. A mode for editing directories by treating them as text. So here we are in DIRAD mode, and we can navigate directories. For example, here we open a subdirectory. If we click here, we go back to where we are. This directory is empty. Anyway, you need to learn how to use this to navigate to the directory in which you unpacked the videos. And then the next part of the exercise is to learn how to use meta-h-meta-e, which is find extra file links, that is explained here in this section of the tutorial. And then you need to use meta-h-meta-e to create links like these ones. And let me show how to do that using links that corresponds to the place in which I opened the zip file in my machine. This is the directory. Sorry, if I execute this, the code cd defines several functions, including the function find Reiner-Koenig grep. It also defines the function find Reiner-Koenig file, and if we execute that function, we go to this directory here, which is the directory in which I unpacked the zip file. And if I type meta-h-meta-e in that directory, I get a temporary buffer like this one. I need to use a smaller font here because some lines are very long. And here you have to type Reiner-Koenig and execute this line here. It will regenerate the buffer. So pay attention to the C's between curly brackets. They become Reiner-Koenig. And then you have to copy these things here to your notes, or to here. And if we did everything correctly, then we can execute this thing here. It will define the function find Reiner-Koenig file, which will open this directory as I did above. And now we can choose one of these videos here, for example the first one, but we have to choose the video file, not the subtitle file. We have to type meta-h-meta-e again, and now we have to choose a short name for the video. I suggest either using this or using an abbreviation of the title, but let me choose this. Now I will run this first line again. It will regenerate this buffer, so the C's between curly braces will become this thing. And now this block here points to that video file. We can test that by executing this line.
Okay, folks.
It opens the video. And if we execute this line here, it defines the function find E01S01 video. And we can execute this function find E01S01 video. And it will be a short hyperlink to this video. And after doing that, we can copy the relevant files, which is to our notes. The relevant files are these ones. Actually, this one is not necessary. And now that we have this, we have two functions, two SEXPs that define short hyperlinks. This one here defines a hyperlink to the directory, and this one here defines a hyperlink to the video. And this is quite similar to these examples here, but note that the examples have bad paths that people will have to fix them somehow. And that's it. I don't know if this exercise is easy enough. I think that it's a bit hard, unfortunately, but if people can manage to do this, they can use these things to create an index of the videos that they have watched, and they note that they can duplicate this line and change the time mark here to 5 minutes, say. Oops, this video is shorter than that. 2 minutes.
The last.
And we can use these things to create an index of the video with some short summary of what this position means here. Sorry for my lack of imagination, but suppose that at the moment 2 minutes of the video there's blah happening. So this text here opens the video at 2 minutes.
The last 3.
And we can use that to mark the positions of the video that we want to watch again, especially the parts of the video in which Rainer Koenig explains things that we will have to watch many times to understand and to memorize the key sequences. Yeah, so that's it.